Welcome to part 3 of the New to UTK video series covering social emotional learning and purposeful play. We will be learning about purposeful and planned interactions.
We wanted to start this session with bringing you back to the Preschool Learning Foundations, Volume 1, where they have the English Language Arts strands. We call them standards more often than not, those of us with a multi-subject, but the Preschool Learning Foundation calls them strands. We're going to kind of focus on the language use and conventions and vocabulary strands today. And the reason we're highlighting these is because it's such a beautiful document and such a great resource for you to think about in your Tier 1 instruction and how to develop and progress in what the progression of language might be in your classroom. And we'll be referencing these as we talk about co-teaching and planning later in the session. But these are from the Preschool Learning Foundations, Volume 1.
I think you leave here with some tools for your toolbox, with some new ideas that kind of invigorate and inspire how to engage your students in fun ways and play in your UTK classrooms. I'm already seeing some great ideas that you've shared, and it's very clear that there's evidence of both structured and unstructured play already happening in UTK classrooms from what you're sharing with me. So I'm seeing free choice every afternoon, dramatic play, manipulative block area, puzzles, art, Play-Doh, etc. Which is fantastic, because in case you're unfamiliar with the term structured and unstructured play, we are going to define those for you, and they are on the screen. So the structured play, when I think of structured play, are those more play scenarios that encompass set rules, roles, expectations, and so on and so forth. And our unstructured play activities are going to contain more of the play that follows the interests of the child or the children, and is a little bit more of an opportunity to let the children take the lead. So it's great that we have both types of play already happening in the classroom, because we want you to be thinking about both structured and unstructured play as we move through the day this afternoon. And I just want to highlight that both structured and unstructured play are important and can create those meaningful opportunities for cooperative learning and language development across the board. Structured play promotes perspective taking, problem solving, expression of emotions. We all know the kids that don't like to lose at Candyland, right? Behavioral regulation, and so on and so forth. And unstructured play also provides opportunity for kids to sort of naturally interact and authentically interact around their shared interests. And it gives kids autonomy, it gives kids a chance to explore. We often see challenging behaviors decrease during unstructured playtime because kids feel calm when they have more choice and they know where the play is going to lead to next. And so there's benefits in all the play, and we hope to share that message over and over again today. Side note, if you see me looking to the left, I do have notes on my screen, and because we only have 30 minutes, I'm going to try to stick to the script today, because as an SLP, as I mentioned, I could talk all day. So I'm gonna play off this for a minute, but there were some things that I did want to hit with structured and unstructured play. When we're thinking about planning play lessons, we might tend to think about play in the context of the classroom. Since that's, as educators, as teachers, as related service providers, where we tend to spend most of our time with our students, right? But as we move through the next half hour, I encourage you to also think about play in the sense of gross motor play, in sensory motor play, in outdoor play. Think all of the play. I have the honor of working UTK recess duty every single week, and so I get to see all the play happening at Pacific View. Shout out to my UTK teachers there. And we have structured play at recess, like sports and cooperative playground games, maybe soccer, basketball, so on and so forth. But I'd also like to share an example of how unstructured play can lead to really natural and authentic interaction. And so a few weeks ago, I was at recess duty, and one of the UTK students just started piling sticks on the ground, and she starts declaring to anyone who will listen, "I'm playing camping. Who wants to play camping with me?" And the students around her kind of came over, and a group of girls were like, "No, we're playing kitties. We do not want to play camping. We're playing kitties." But sure enough, you see them start to kind of add the sticks to her campfire that she was building. And I was about to step in and be like, why don't you play both? Or, you know, kind of lead into a way where maybe they could play together. And before I could, they came to that conclusion on their own. And they're like, why don't we play camping kitties? And the play turned into using their paws to add to the campfire, but don't get too close, kitty. It's too hot. So there is opportunity for both structured and unstructured play woven throughout the day. And it's great to have both available to students. We can go on to this next slide. Yes, thank you. So it's, oops, sorry, I wanted to hit the quote there. So that led me into this quote. So it's important to keep the balance between self-initiated, self-motivated, and joyful play, and giving children active play support. So as an educator, we can make almost any play activity more structured or less structured. I could have stepped in and assigned roles in that, you know, camping kitty fire activity and said, you're going to be this and you're going to be that, and our goal is to build a campfire and so on and so forth. But I'm really glad I didn't, because through their own exploration, the students had a better idea and probably play outcome for how to grow that play than I, as an adult, probably could have come up with. And so knowing that we should make room for all the different types of play in the classroom and outside of the classroom, I want you to reflect today on what structured opportunities already exist across your student's school day and what unstructured opportunities exist across your student's school day for play. And I love this quote because it reminds me that there's really no wrong way to play, but that we as educators or grown-ups can step in to be that active play support. And so in finding that balance in structured play, I like to think of the grown-ups role more as a guide. You are setting up the rules, you're setting up the expectations, you might remind them of the rules. You're taking a more active role in that scenario. So on the soccer field at recess duty, I've been the coach, I've been the referee, I've kind of engaged the kids in that way around that structured activity. But a guide is more active, whereas in unstructured play, a facilitator is someone who's more along for the ride. So you're there to make the play easier, more accessible, offer ideas of where to go next if the kids get stuck, without interrupting the natural flow of the interaction.
So we wanted to throw in some ideas around the different co-teaching models that you can use to capture some of this language and help inform you about where your students are in the progression of language development. And so we'll be talking a little bit about parallel and complementary in particular. Holly, do you mind going back to the standards or the strands? So if we're using our parallel teaching, one thing we could do, one more back, we could use, for example, strand 1.1, where we're kind of popping into those play areas during the unstructured play time and just capturing verbatim what they are doing. Are they using language to problem solve? Are they using language to predict? Where are they on the continuum? So on the left-hand side, you have 48 months, on the right-hand column, you have 60 months, right? So your anecdotal notes could be just capturing their language verbatim, both of you, right? Both of you kind of mingling with the students throughout the play centers and capturing their language verbatim, and then coming back together as a co-teaching team and talking about, where do you feel they landed? Are they closer to 48 months? Are they closer to 60? Or are they beyond? Or are they not even at 48 months? And maybe talk around why that might be. But I love what Caitlin said about, so often in the play centers, we get some of the most rich language that we get from these children all day long, right? They're engaged. It's something they're choosing to do. It's something they're creating in their minds. So what a beautiful time to capture their language and do this with using your parallel teaching. So you both can kind of be focusing on the same strand, and that would be parallel teaching, right? Where you're both kind of capturing that. But you could also do complementary. For example, one of you might be doing one of these specific strands, but one of you might be targeting certain students because you have a concern. And you might do more complementary where you're taking those anecdotal notes on different students. The other thing you can do with these ideas is use a checklist, right? So you and your co-teacher can kind of sit down and take these strands, pull them apart, think about what components of the strands, for example, on that 1.1, predicting, problem solving, seeking new information, include reasoning. You could make checklists and kind of go through and create checklists for which part of those strands you might want to focus on and really center your thinking around when you're capturing those anecdotal notes or those observations. The other thing you can do, and Caitlin alluded to this, is scaffold, right? Jump in there and help scaffold that problem solving, like, prompting them with, well, if that didn't work, what else could you try? And, kind of help them with that problem solving thinking. So we just wanted to throw in some co-teaching options for you to do this work.
And that active play support can start well before the play even begins, right? And so we're going to give you some ideas about how you can plan play ahead of time and how you can introduce play to your students in the moment to set the stage for that learning and that language growth. And so 2 things you can think about in your planning are how you're going to introduce the play to your students on the day of. And so I think it was Cheers that gave the example about the only time that it's more structured is when she's setting up the roles for those learning centers. And that's exactly what we'd love to see happening, right? So 2 ways you can do that to carry out that setting of the roles and the expectations, whether it's a structured activity or an unstructured activity, are to start by 1, introducing and naming each item that's available for play. So do you know what this is? This is a barn. A barn is like a house where animals live on a farm. Or this is a magnifying glass. We can use it to make small bugs look bigger. You are giving them the language to try on during their play, and you're giving them the options for different things to say. And then the second thing you can do before the play gets started is briefly model a play action and language that you can use while playing. So model the animals eating food from the barn, or model using the magnifying glass to look at an insect or a small object. And if you'll notice, kind of intentionally align these with your next benchmark unit. So you have kind of farming and food sources and insects and ecology coming up. And so it's a way to incorporate is associated with those topics, the more academic vocabulary, the more subject-specific vocabulary, but also functional vocabulary that's going to help the kids make sense of their world. And if we can go to the next slide, Holly. In the planning phase as well, you can also be thinking about how to use that functional topic-based vocabulary in combination with some core vocabulary words. So what phrases can you make or plan out ahead of time or think or rehearse to model for your students that will model the use of core vocabulary and that topic-based vocabulary? The horse is going in the barn. Go in, it goes in. That butterfly is going up. So we can think about the language we're going to use ahead of time. We have used similar graphic organizers in our own lesson planning, but especially when we're co-teaching with teachers as related service providers, it always helps us to think about, it's overwhelming to think about doing something new, but it helps me to think about how can I include this in what I'm already doing. And so it's a way to look at your daily schedule and the activities that you already have, and where can we enhance those? Where can we make a little bit more space or a little bit of more room for an unstructured play activity or a more structured play opportunity that's linked to one of those preschool language foundations? There's a space there, as I was just talking about, to think about the phrases you might model or the important vocabulary words that you want to target during that play interaction. And it just gives you a space to think about what that interaction might look like with your students, and then what data are you hoping to collect from that, as we all spoke to earlier, whether it's a checklist or gathering some language samples and so on and so forth. So we kind of talked about what you can do before the play and maybe how to plan the play by design and with intent, but what do you do when the kids are playing? And so there are some tools for your toolbox here. I'm not going to go into this in depth, but play expansions are an intervention tool that we're finding, especially for our students who have high needs with social communication, our students on the autism spectrum, for example, that by using play expansions, we're naturally adding to their play. And it's a more child-led approach. And so this is one tool for your toolbox, and we'll go into the next chart in a minute. But how you do a play expansion is that you just join in and imitate and describe whatever the child's doing. So if the child is pretending to stir a pot, you say, I'm stirring the soup. Then you give them an idea maybe for what comes next. So then you can model a new related play action and describe it. I'm feeding the baby soup. You're just taking what they're doing and you're adding a little bit. And so I really love this chart. We were able to adapt this from a speech language pathology research brief article, and it gives you some practical tips and good ideas for engaging in some of that child-led play. And I know for me, sometimes it's easier for me to act as that guide in a structured play interaction because it's easier for me to kind of control and explain and set rules and expectations as a grown-up. So during unstructured playtime, here's some things we can be doing to support the interaction. So instead of praising and saying, good job, you can try encouraging. You worked hard on building that tower. Instead of directing the play, can you find the brown cat, or let's make a castle? You can try tracking or observing or giving choices. I noticed you picked up the dog, or do you want to make a castle or a barn? So the child still has that autonomy and that choice of where to take the play next. Instead of talking continuously, you can try pausing and listening. This is a huge communication strategy that is probably on every single IEP for a student who may have more needs in developing language, where we really need to give them that increased time and respond. And so just by pausing and waiting a moment, we can give them that time to process the language and to come out and express. Instead of trying to elicit specific actions or phrases from the child, we can kind of model without expectation. So those scoreboards are another tool that we find very useful for our students with language needs. It's a great intervention tool, but we also find it universally helpful for all students to have that visual reinforcement in building that core vocabulary. And so my UTK teachers have one of those scoreboards at every play center. And we've really been practicing, if you're in a play center with kids, just modeling how to use it without any expectations for the students to do anything back. You're just modeling that that is an acceptable and helpful form of communication. Instead of frequent questioning or quizzing, you can try commenting or describing. Instead of imitating, we recommend those language expansions or recaps. So, doll silly, you can say the doll is so silly. And instead of having a do attitude, like we need to be doing something in this moment, you can just have a have fun, I'm here with you, I see you, I understand you, I care attitude.
Puppets, reenacting stories, having a veterinary center, grooming center. Cabrillo has that going on. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I really like to attach those play opportunities to the academic unit too, right? To the benchmark unit. So if it's farm, is the topic of the benchmark unit, how can we create more structured play opportunities? Maybe we're going to reenact the book or the text that went with this, and somebody's going to be the farmer and somebody else is going to then be the person who gets to receive the food at the grocery store that came from the farm, or so on and so forth. Whereas another center could be incorporating that sensory motor. So you have the play animals and they're dirty, we need to wash them, and just giving the kids a bucket of water and some toys.
Rebecca and Teresa over at Sandberg, I thought it was just beautiful. They brought in a huge bag full of cardboard, plastic, empty egg cartons for Earth Week, and the kids are playing with them, and it was so fun yesterday. We were cracking eggs and making cake mixes all over the place. But you know, what a simple, easy way to tie into it, like Caitlin was saying, a topic or a theme or a subject that you're already studying, and simple
I
way
often
to
say, and I did do this for a friend, like, I'm not going, any new parents, I'm not buying any toys for their kids. I'm just going to give you some cardboard boxes and a laundry basket. Because really, if you think outside of the box or get in the box, you can make anything fun, engaging, motivating, and meaningful for a child, or they can find almost anything fun, engaging, motivating, and meaningful with just a little bit of that active play support. And so I love that. I love that they brought everyday items, and we're using them in a different way, because it's also accessible. You don't need all these fancy toys. You don't need all these materials as a teacher. You can take a look around your classroom and see what you already have on deck and go from there.